Welcome back, everyone. This is Steve Cole coming at you from the Access Training Team and Ada County Paramedics with part 2 of our High Performance CPR update. So we've talked about the importance of putting time, effort, and the impact of CPR. However, let's talk about why CPR works. Why is it so important? Well, what we know for quite some time, this study is from 2004, is that when we look at the things that impact survival, when we look at the things that really make a difference, advanced life support, in other words, the paramedic whiz-bang magic, has a relatively small impact on outcomes. In this particular study, it was only about 1.1% improvement in survival if they had a paramedic at their side rapidly. What did make an impact? Well, having somebody on scene to actually call 911 and have an impact was about 4.4%. Having that same someone or somebody similar do early CPR, that was a 3.7 improvement in survival percent. And having defibrillation in under 8 minutes was on average 3.4%. Now I want to point out a small thing here. If you look at this bar, this was the largest variability compared to the other ones. Now the reason this is so variable is timing of defibrillation. And that's something that high performance CPR really stresses on, is appropriate timing of defibrillation. And we'll talk about the importance of timing of defibrillation in a later slide, and what specifically why we do 2 minutes of CPR before we defibrillate to get maximal outcome. But the bottom line is that when you look at all the different, impacts, advanced life support, paramedic whiz-bang stuff had the least impact compared to everything else. That should raise some eyebrows. Because what it means is that when we look at everything that had impact, it was only really CPR and appropriately timed defibrillation. I will stress high quality CPR and appropriately timed defibrillation. So what that means is that CPR, high performance CPR, not paramedics, is what saves lives. And who owns high performance CPR? The EMT does. So my message to you right now, if you are an EMT, an advanced EMT in our system, is that this is square in your wheelhouse. This is so important. This is your area to shine. And my message to the paramedics is don't get in their way. Help them, support them, work around them, not through them, not over them. That resuscitation triangle owned by high-performing EMTs as a team is the most important part of resuscitation. High-performance CPR not only saves lives, it makes all the other stuff work. All the other, paramedic whiz-bang paramagic stuff, epinephrine, airway, even defibrillation, and all the other drugs work better when high quality CPR is in place. And without high quality CPR, none of it matters at all. Why is that the case? Let's look at why, from a cellular level, why that's so important. And the answer is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ATP is the energy block, is the energy that the mitochondria in most of our cells use. And it's produced by a combination of glucose and oxygen. So what happens in essence is CPR, high quality CPR I should say, restores ATP. And this is a study that shows that. In this particular study, they took pigs, and we like pigs because their hearts are similar to ours, and they put them into VFib. And for the paramedics in here, this is what we call coarse VFib. And they let them percolate in their juices for the barbecue for about 8 minutes, the alleged standard response interval. And if you'll notice, this is also VFib, but it's what we call fine VFib. Some people jokingly call it coarse asystole, but the technical term is fine VFib. And the reason it looks so weak is because almost no ATP is left. Now here's the thing, is that if you shock them when there's ATP, when there's this coarse VFib, then you are more likely to get ROSC back. You're more likely to get conversion to a perfusing rhythm. If you shock them during this phase when there's almost no ATP, you're more likely to throw them into a systole where they will stay there and die. However, in this particular study, they did CPR for 90 seconds, high quality CPR for 90 seconds, and just 90 seconds restored 30 to 40% of the ATP. And you'll look at this waveform. It looks more like this than it does this. It is coarse VFib. It tells us that this might get a pulse back. That is the impact of high quality CPR. So let's talk about the actual real world impact. And what it comes down to is something called the three-phase model of resuscitation. Again, if you look here, we have coarse VFib, fine VFib, asystole. Survivable, resuscitatable, or I should say very resuscitatable, not resuscitatable, dead, or more likely to stay dead. So what happens is, this is about 2 to 4 minutes, give or take, when the heart still has ATP before it exhausts it. This is 4 to 10 minutes, give or take. And what this means is that after 10 minutes, when they go into a systole, it takes a lot more effort, and it takes different interventions to make a huge impact here. But what makes an impact here? Well, in the coarse VFib phase, the electrical phase, you guessed it, it's defibrillation. In this, it's CPR. Now, CPR won't resuscitate them per se, usually. What CPR does is it puts them back into this electrical phase, where then electricity will work. So what this means, since we almost always, the overwhelming majority of our cardiac arrests that we arrive at the patient's side occur in this circulatory phase, this is why we do high quality CPR for 2 minutes before we ever shock, no matter what their rhythm is, to throw them back into the electrical phase, so that when we do shock after 2 minutes, they're more likely to recover. This makes a huge, huge, huge impact. So with that, let's look at the components of CPR to look at how we can get better. And the key thing we talked about, and I mentioned this before, but I keep saying again, there's a reason why I use the term high performance and high quality CPR, because low quality CPR doesn't have an impact. Low quality CPR, all its various components, will not make a big difference. So let's look at what makes high quality or high performance CPR. And the key thing is it's performance, not positions. So our flavor of high performance CPR looks a little bit different than Seattle's, that looks a little bit different than Austin Travis counties, and looks a little bit different than others. So, and it will change over time. But the bottom line that won't change is the performance metrics. So any system you go to, regardless of the way they do high performance CPR, if they focus on the performance parameters, they will have improvement and success. If they just focus on the protocol or just focus on getting people in the right positions and not the performance, they will not have good success, and they probably might even get worse. So that's the key, focusing on performance and not protocols and positions. Now, we will use protocol and positions to teach and to organize and to maximize our performance, but the goal is the actual performance metrics. So what are our performance metrics? What are our goals? What are we shooting for? And I've had this slide several times before, and it's still true. There are 5 performance metrics, 5 key parts of our high performance model: rate, depth, recoil, minimally interrupted compressions, and decreasing our ventilation. So we look at our rate. We're shooting for 100 to 120 with 110 as our spot on goal. Depth, we're looking at 2 to 2.25, 2.5 inches. Release and recoil, we want 100% complete recoil every single compression. We want to keep our interruptions to less than 10 seconds, preferably less than 3 seconds, with a total compression fraction, and this will come up again, a total compression fraction of 80%. Now that means 80% of every minute we are on the chest doing compressions, not 80% of the total code, 80% of every minute. Because if we do great for most of our minutes, but we have 1 minute we're off, we're still hurting the patient. And finally, decreasing our ventilatory rate and actually doing better ventilations, just doing fewer of them. Lots of different ways we're going to improve the rate, depth, recoil, interruptions, and ventilations in our resuscitation. And we're going to talk about those in specific videos coming up. So with that in mind, we're going to take a break, and I want to thank you for your time. And in the next video, we'll talk about compressions. And the video after that, we'll talk about the other key parts of our resuscitation. Thank you.